Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed. At 1,000 subscribers, I'll be posting a special video. I pressed his passcode with my thumb while the shower ran. I am Kate and I was 32 when I did that. The code was never a secret, the sneaking was. You know that jump in your chest when you cross a line? That hit before the screen even lit up. The home screen popped open and I almost locked it again. My pulse went wild like my body tried to pull back. I told myself I just wanted to check the time. That is how we excuse small betrayals, we shrink them. I still scrolled down to the messages icon anyway. A text banner slid across the top like it waited for me. Unknown number at first glance, just a single letter as name. J. The preview said, "I miss you already, call me later." My mouth went dry so fast I actually swallowed air. I tapped the notification before my brain caught up. The thread opened on weeks of messages stacked in quiet rows. No emoji sprayed everywhere, no obvious hearts or naked jokes. Just small phrases like "I need you" and "you always get me." Those lines hit harder than any cartoon heart ever could. At first I thought spam and then I saw his replies. He wrote, "You are the only one who understands me," vivid words. He wrote, "I wish I could see you more," with 3 dots. He wrote, "She is starting to notice I am not subtle." My hands left tiny marks on the case from how tight I gripped it. I scrolled further up and saw selfies from Jay, half-framed. Always cropped at the mouth or the shoulder like on purpose. Sometimes his arm appeared near her hair, always casual and close. He answered with pictures of his lunch, the couch, his shoes. Normal stuff that somehow felt dirty now that I knew the tone. The shower cut off, sudden sharp like a slammed door. Panic shot through me so hard I almost dropped the thing. I hit the lock button and set it back on the nightstand. Screen face down, same angle as before like I rehearsed it. I sat on the edge of the bed and forgot how to breathe. Water thudded in the tub while he grabbed a towel. Footsteps moved closer and every step sounded like an accusation. I tried to make my face do something casual and relaxed. You ever try to look normal when you are on fire? That is exactly how my cheeks felt when the door opened. He walked out rubbing his hair with the towel, calm. His eyes went from my face to his phone instantly. That tiny glance sliced right through any excuse I had prepared. "Hey, you okay?" His voice sounded light but his hand hovered near the nightstand. "Yeah, just tired," I answered and my voice cracked. He paused a second longer than usual, then picked up the phone. He did not check the time, he checked the lock screen. Thumb pressed, quick look, screen flipped back over, face down again. That one smooth motion screamed louder than any jealous rant. Back then I still clung to the old story about them. His best friend, always mentioned like a harmless running joke. Someone from before me, someone he did not really see anymore. Now I had a new story forming that tasted metallic. I just was not ready to say the word affair out loud. He moved around the room like nothing weird hung between us. He pulled on jeans, another shirt, socks from the drawer. I watched every tiny movement like it might confess something. It is strange how a familiar body can suddenly look suspicious. I kept waiting for him to slip and give me a clue. "Want breakfast or are you heading in early?" he asked. He buttoned his shirt while he talked, eyes on the buttons. I shook my head and forced a smile that hurt. "I am not hungry, I think I will just grab coffee later." My stomach already twisted too tight to keep anything down. He crossed the room and kissed my forehead, automatic. I did not lean into it, I also did not pull away. That middle ground felt worse than either extreme somehow. He smelled like soap and steam, exactly the same as always. Everything looked normal while my brain screamed that nothing was normal. "Do you need anything before I go?" he asked near the door. He held his keys, his phone, his wallet, the usual stack. I watched how his fingers wrapped around the phone like protection. "I am fine," I said, and even I did not believe it. He left with a quick smile and a soft click of the lock. The second I heard the car pull out, I reached again. Same passcode, same smooth unlock, completely different motive this time. I opened the thread with J and scrolled lower. There it was, the line that branded itself into my memory. "If she finds out about us, everything blows up." My vision wobbled for a second like my eyes lagged. I blinked hard until the letters settled back into place. He had typed that 4 days earlier, right before canceling dinner. He had told me he was stuck late at work. Reading it now, that whole night replayed with new lighting. Another message from Jay sat right below that confession. Relax, we are careful, she will not notice, it read. Then a photo from a parking lot T. Whoa, sets of feet. His shoes and hers close enough to touch like habit. I zoomed in so far the pixels blurred into blocks. I remember thinking I should take screenshots as proof. That is what people online always tell you to do. Instead, I just stared at the screen and shook. Some part of me still hoped there was another explanation. You always want a softer story when your marriage is on the line. My chest felt heavy and weird, like breathing through wet fabric. I kept scrolling up, chasing some message that might redeem him. It never came, just older lines with the same sick pattern. You saved me back then. I do not know who I would be without you. That sentence hit different, like it belonged to another genre. Not flirting, not normal friendship either, something deeper and heavier. I did not know what back then meant yet. I only knew he had never used that tone with me. That realization hurt more than the miss you text somehow. I finally shoved the phone under my pillow like evidence. Stupid move, I know, but I panicked and needed it close. It felt like a bomb I had to babysit. Every vibration could blow up the version of life I still pretended to have. I lay back and stared at the ceiling without actually seeing anything. My brain jumped from plan to plan with zero landing. Confront him tonight. Wait a week and gather more. Call a friend and spill everything. Every option ended with some version of my world cracking. I opened the thread one more time and typed a reply. Not to Jay, to him right there in their chat. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard so long they ached. I wrote, we need to talk about her, then deleted it. I backed out before I left any trace he could twist. Instead, I texted him from my own thread with something harmless. Hope your day goes well, love you. I watched the typing dots appear almost instantly. Love you too, talk later. No heart, no joke, nothing that matched what I had just read. That contrast turned into the final shove I needed. I realized there were two relationships running in parallel. One with me, one with Jay, and I was the one in the dark. Maybe I still misunderstood the shape of it, maybe it was not physical. But whatever it was, I knew I was already losing. I pulled my laptop closer and typed her handle into search. My fingers moved fast, my brain dragged behind in slow panic. Work email blinked in another tab, completely ignored already irrelevant noise. Every keystroke felt like I was carving into my own life. Her profile popped up first, like the app knew exactly what I wanted. Follower count decent, not huge, just normal enough to feel real. I tapped through the grid, rows of trips, parties, inside jokes. He showed up in older posts, always near her, never random. There he was at some backyard thing, arm around her shoulders. Different haircut, same smile, same stupid tilt of his head. They looked easy together, that relaxed closeness you cannot fake twice. My stomach clenched because I knew I would never look like that. Comments under those photos hit harder than the pictures themselves. Little lines like you always know what I need from his account. Replies from her like you are stuck with me forever. Back then those words probably felt cute, now they sounded like threats. I scrolled to newer posts, searching for any trace of him. He vanished about the time we started dating, like someone edited history. She still posted group shots, office outings, smiles with other people. His absence there sounded as loud as the messages on his phone. I opened the message button and stared at the blank field forever. My thumbs hovered while my thoughts fought each other in circles. Hey, this is his wife, can we talk? Felt both calm and unhinged. I typed it out once, watched the letters appear, then erased everything. Sending that note meant admitting out loud that something was wrong. Not sending it kept me stuck with questions chewing through my ribs. I closed the app and promised myself I was just gathering information. That is what every stalker says right before they cross another line. A notification from him popped up on my screen a minute later. How is your morning? Hope you're doing okay today. Sweet, short, exactly what a good partner would write during a busy day. I read it 3 times, then looked back at his smiling photos with her. Fine, just working, hope your meetings are going well, I answered. I watched the typing dots flare, then vanish, then flare again. Busy talk later showed up, nothing extra, nothing warm, just efficient. It felt like he texted me from a different universe than hers. I could not shake the feeling that I was the side story. That ugly thought scared me enough to push me into the next move. I opened my personal chat with his sister and scrolled up fast. She is the type who shares by default, filters later if ever. Hey, random question, you still talk to Jess much? IW. Wrote. I tried to keep it casual, like idle curiosity during a slow Tuesday. 3 dots appeared almost instantly, like she already had something ready. Not really, not after everything, why, dropped onto my screen. That last word sat there like a trap with teeth. I stabbed back, what do you mean everything, what happened? She waited longer this time, which did not help my heartbeat. Just drama, they were intense, stuff got weird, he hates when I bring it up, came through in pieces. I stared at that sentence, heart pounding so hard my vision fuzzed. Intense. Weird. Those are the words people use when they avoid actual details. I asked, are we talking cheating weird or something else, fingers shaking. No, it was not like that, relax, she replied, then paused. He went through a really bad time, she was there, he shuts down if I mention it. My hands went cold because this was not the answer I expected. It was not better though, it was just a different kind of scary. I typed what kind of bad, then hesitated with my thumb over send. If I pushed, she might spill something he never intended me to hear. If I backed off, I stayed stuck guessing in the dark. I sent it anyway because self-preservation sometimes looks exactly like nosiness. She took even longer this round, long enough for my lunch break to end. Honestly, you should ask him, he told me not to talk about it, finally appeared. I swore under my breath, quiet and useless, staring at that line. He had given other people rules about what they could share with me. I shoved my phone into my bag and walked to the bathroom quickly. Locking the stall felt like the only boundary I still controlled. I leaned my forehead against my arm and tried to breathe normally. It felt like I was married to an edited version of him. Back at my desk, I pretended to work while my mind plotted. I knew 2 things now, both of them ugly truths in different ways. 1, something heavy tied him to her that went beyond old memories. 2, he trusted at least one other person to hold that story for him. The rest of the afternoon blurred, but my decision kept sharpening. Confronting him without more detail would just end in gaslighting and half-answers. I wanted proof that could not be brushed off as jealousy. That is when I remembered her tagged places on those posts. I reopened her profile and tapped the little location tags one by one. A bar, a hiking trail, a cafe that showed up more than once. That last one caught my attention because it was near his office. I saved the address and told myself I was only curious. The second that bookmark icon lit up, I knew I was lying. I was not curious, I was preparing to crash their secret bubble. The thought of randomly seeing her there made my pulse spike. I still left the address pinned because backing down felt worse. On the drive home, my brain rehearsed a dozen fake conversations. Casual ones where I mentioned her in passing, more direct ones with accusations. In every version, his face shifted from confusion to anger to distance. None of those imaginary scenes ended with me feeling safe. When he walked in that evening, I watched him with new eyes. He dropped his keys in the bowl, toes nudging his shoes off. Everything looked like routine, which almost made it more unnerving. I tracked every small pause, every glance at his phone, every short silence. "How was your day?" he asked while pouring water into a glass. He leaned on the counter, relaxed, like nothing in his world had shifted. "Busy," I answered, then added, "Talk to your sister a bit." His fingers tightened around the glass for a second barely, but I caught it. "Oh yeah, how is she doing?" he asked, eyes on the sink. That weird little pause between words sounded like someone tripping mid-sentence. "She asked about you and Jess," I dropped, pretending it was nothing much. The glass clicked against the counter, louder than necessary, sharp in the air. "I have not seen Jess in forever," he replied, reaching for his phone. He glanced at the screen, then placed it face down near his elbow. That move had become so automatic, so built-in, it almost made me laugh. Not from humor, from that nervous edge you get right before you snap. I shrugged and opened the fridge just to break eye contact. Funny, I saw a few old posts with you two everywhere, I mentioned. The room went quiet enough that I could hear the clock tick. I was young, it was a different time, he answered, voice shorter now. There it was again, that way he sliced off topics with one quick line. Conversation closed, do not approach, do not look behind the curtain. If I pushed right then, we would move into a full-blown fight. I stepped back instead, but the retreat tasted a lot like defeat. We ate while talking about surface things, schedules, errands, nothing dangerous. On the outside, it probably looked like any ordinary married evening. Inside my head, I kept replay. Inge's sister's hint about that rough period. Every time he laughed, I heard I told her not to tell you. After we finished, he went to the couch and scrolled through his phone. I watched the faint movements of his thumb, the pattern of his focus. At one point his jaw tightened barely, then he relaxed again. I knew without seeing it that a notification from her had flashed. I took my own phone and opened Jess's profile one more time. Instead of just staring this round, I hit the message button again. This time I wrote slower, choosing each word like it might explode. Hi, I think we should meet, it is about him. I hovered over send for what felt like an entire hour. If I reached out, there was no way back to pretending. If I stayed quiet, I kept living with that constant buzzing suspicion. My thumb trembled, then pressed the screen, and the message left my control. Her answer popped up before I could even lock the screen. Where do you want to talk? Showed on my display. No emoji, no nervous laughter, just straight to business. My hand tightened around the phone like it might run away. I stared at that line and my brain flipped through excuses. This is a mistake, this is crazy, this is necessary. My thumbs moved anyway, faster than my common sense. There is a cafe near his office, can you meet tomorrow? I wrote. Another pause, long enough for me to regret everything again. Sure, name the time came through short and calm. I picked after work, early evening, just before traffic peaks. She replied with a simple okay, nothing else, no questions. The urge to backtrack hit hard, like a delayed punch. I almost typed forget it, we are fine, never mind. Instead, I set a reminder on my phone for the meeting. Committing with technology felt like putting ink on something dangerous. From the couch, he glanced over as my screen lit up again. Who keeps you that busy tonight? He asked with a half smile. Coworker stuff, I answered, tossing my phone deeper into the cushion. The lie slipped out smoother than I want to admit. He shifted closer and touched my leg, casual and familiar. Do you have plans tomorrow night? His tone stayed light, his knuckles were not. I forced a small shrug and looked past him at the wall. Might grab drinks with some people after work, I replied. He hesitated for a beat that stretched just a little too long. Anyone I know? His jaw flexed while he tried to act uninterested. You do not know them, I said, which was technically true. That made it sound like I had full social freedom. He nodded slowly, then changed the topic to some show. I sat there answering, already planning conversations with someone else. That night I barely slept, just turned ideas over like stones. Every scenario felt like a trap, no matter who I trusted. Confront him first, and I looked paranoid without proof. Talk to her alone, and I crossed another line in secret. Morning came with that tight feeling behind my ribs still there. I dressed quickly, something neutral, nothing that looked like armor. I caught my reflection and barely recognized the expression staring back. Suspicion adds years in ways makeup cannot fix. On my way out, he stopped near the door with his keys. You sure you are okay lately? He studied my face like he hunted for clues. I am fine, I answered, and we both heard the lie. Work dragged, but the hours still somehow disappeared. I watched the clock creep toward the time I had given Jess. My hands were clumsy on the keyboard, my focus shot. Every email I wrote felt like filler in someone else's day. 30 minutes before I had to leave, my phone buzzed again. Still good for later, her message asked. I stared at that sentence, part of me hoping she canceled. Yep, see you there, I typed, fingers stiff, body locked. I left the office with my stomach in a tight knot. In the car, I almost turned the engine off and walked back. You ever feel yourself stepping into something and still not stop? That was me pulling out of the lot anyway. The closer I got, the more my thoughts scrambled. What if she framed me as the unstable one? What if they had some coordinated story ready? What if I really was blowing up my own life for nothing? I parked a block away so he would not recognize the car. That choice alone made me feel like some low-budget spy. I checked my messages one last time before going in. No updates from him, one last see you inside from her. The place was busy enough that I could blend without effort. I scanned faces quickly, hunting for the familiar features from photos. She sat near the back, posture straight, phone in her hand. When her eyes met mine, I knew she had already guessed. I walked over, each step weirdly loud in my own head. Jess, my voice came out thinner than I wanted. She set her phone down and folded her hands together. You must be her, she answered, watching my expression like a test. Up close she looked tired in a way makeup cannot hide. Not tragic, not glamorous, just worn at the edges. That threw me for a second. I had pictured someone shinier. It is harder to hate a person who just looks human. I sat across from her and my legs bounced under the table. Thanks for meeting, I managed, fingers laced so tight they ached. No problem, she replied, gaze flicking briefly toward the door. We both looked like runners waiting for a starting gun. A server came by and asked what we wanted. Jess ordered something first with zero fuss, then glanced at me. I picked the first drink that came to mind and handed the menu back. As soon as we were alone again, the air felt heavy. I will be straightforward, I started, because small talk would kill me. I looked at his messages. I saw your name, that line about missing you. Her shoulders dropped a fraction, like she had expected that confession. Okay, she answered, fingers tracing a faint line on the table. I need to know if you two are sleeping together, I said. The words left a sour taste, but I forced them out anyway. Her eyes snapped up, and for a second she looked almost offended. No, that is not happening, she replied, voice low but clear. You expect me to just accept that? I asked, leaning forward. He hides his phone, he cancels things, he talks about you like you are his favorite person. I heard my volume climb and forced it back down. A couple at the next table glanced over before returning to their own drama. She took a breath slow, like she counted in her head. I get why you would jump straight there, she said, hands now flat. But that is not the secret between us. That word between sliced through me, a lot more than she probably intended. So there is a secret, I pushed, feeling my nails dig into my palms. Her mouth tightened and she looked away, jaw working. He will hate that I am even here, she whispered. He made me promise to keep certain things away from your world. I felt my face heat up, partly anger, partly humiliation. He made rules about what I am allowed to know with you. I heard my own voice shake and it embarrassed me. No partner does that if everything is healthy, I added, maybe too loud. She flinched at that, which told me more than any apology. We were more than friends once, she said, words dropping fast. It burned out, we ended, but there is history there. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my neck. Did this continue after we got together? I asked, numbers flying through my head. We did not cross that line once you entered the picture, she answered quickly. The speed should have reassured me, it did not. It sounded rehearsed, like something she had repeated in her own guilt loop. I could feel every other person in that room fade out. That still does not explain the way he texts you, I pressed on. You always get me, I need you, that kind of thing. The phrases tasted worse as I said them out loud. She rubbed her forehead and finally met my eyes again. There was a night where he almost did something permanent, she said. I was there and I pulled him back from that choice. My throat tightened, even though I did not fully understand yet. What does that mean exactly? I asked, though a part of me knew. I am not going into details, that is his story, she replied. Just know that is why I get messages that sound like that. He talks to me when his brain walks back toward that edge. For a moment, the sounds around us blurred into background static. I tried to picture him reaching that point and my chest hurt. Anger twisted with something that felt too close to pity. I hated that she was the one who knew that version. So you hold all the parts that scare him, I said quietly. And he gives me the edited highlight reel. It came out harsher than I planned, but also honest. Her eyes softened in a way that almost made me furious. He loves you, she said, leaning in slightly. I know that even from the outside. He just does not want you to see what I saw. That is not fair to you, but it is how he copes. I laughed once sharp with zero humor in it. Do you understand how insane that sounds from my seat? You get the version of him that almost disappeared, I get the one that cooks dinner. And I am supposed to feel grateful for my portion. She winced like I had reached a sore spot she still carried. I pulled back when you two got serious, she said, eyes dropping. He asked me to stay out of your way, to give you space. But when he spirals, he still calls and I still answer. So the late-night texts are him spiraling, I asked, trying to keep up. The ones I am allowed to know about, yes, she replied. There are others, she added, voice almost fading on that last word. That tiny detail hit me harder than everything before it. What do you mean others? I asked, my nails biting into my skin. He will message me and delete things before you ever see his phone, she said. He is terrified you will connect his behavior now with who he used to be. He thinks if you see the whole picture you will leave. That line landed like a brick in my chest. I realized I was clenching my jaw so tightly it ached. So instead he keeps me clueless and leans on you in the dark, I said. Which somehow feels exactly like betrayal, even if you never touch. She did not argue with that, which almost surprised me. I tried to push him to be honest, she murmured. He begged me not to force it, not yet, he keeps saying he will tell you when he is ready. Meanwhile you are here asking me questions he should answer himself. I pushed my chair back a few inches, needing space from all of it. The room suddenly felt too compact, like the walls had leaned in. I appreciate you meeting me, I really do, I managed. But I cannot keep pretending this setup is normal. As I stood, she reached out and touched my wrist lightly. If you confront him, he will know I talked about the night, she warned. Use this however you need, just do not tell him you heard it from me. The fear in her eyes made it clear how tangled they still were. I pulled my arm back and nodded, even though I hated the condition. Once again I was being pulled into their private rules. I am done playing along with secrets I never agreed to, I said. Then I turned and walked out before I lost my nerve. On the way to the door, I felt her gaze on my back. Not smug, not guilty, just heavy, like she already knew what came next. Out on the sidewalk, the air hit my face and barely registered. I realized I had entered that place hoping to catch a cheater, and left holding something bigger and much harder to fight. I killed my headlights as soon as he turned into the lot. My hand stayed on the wheel even after the engine stopped. I watched his car roll into a space near the side entrance. He had left the house 20 minutes earlier, calling it Guy's Night. He sat in his seat for a moment, not moving at all. No music, no phone in his hand, just stillness. Then he got out and shoved his keys into his pocket fast. That quick, jerky motion told me more than any explanation. I slid lower in my seat when another vehicle pulled in. The door opened and Jess stepped out, alone, head bent slightly. She walked straight toward him like this was their normal meeting spot. He waited for her, shoulders dropping as soon as she reached him. They did not hug like lovers, which almost confused me. It was closer to how people grab each other after bad news. Her hand rested on his arm longer than a greeting needs. He leaned toward her like his body already knew that position. For a second I considered jumping out and walking over. I pictured myself saying surprise, thought this was Guy's night. I could almost see both their faces in that scene. Then I imagined them denying everything and turning me into the crazy one. Instead I cracked my window and listened to muffled fragments. Jess's voice carried a little, his stayed low and tight. You ready? I heard her ask, words soft but firm. He nodded once, then they moved toward a side door together. I waited until they disappeared inside before I left my car. My legs felt rubbery, like they might give out mid-step. I followed at a distance, just close enough to keep them in view. Every footstep sounded louder than it probably was, like my guilt had volume. The entrance they used led to a stairwell going down. A laminated sheet hung near the wall with some schedule. One line caught my eye because of the bold print. Survivors Support Meeting, it read, followed by tonight's date and time. My throat went dry so fast I had to swallow twice. Something permanent, Jess had called it earlier at the cafe. Standing there, I understood what permanent meant without anyone spelling it. My mind still tried to dodge the actual word even then. I moved down a few steps and stopped where the sound carried. Voices drifted up, mixed tones, no clear sentences at first. I eased closer until I could see the open doorway below. Metal chairs sat in a loose ring, people scattered around them. He took a seat near the far side, just beside him. He rubbed his palms on his jeans like he could sand off nerves. Jess watched him, not the rest of the circle. That focus stabbed more than any romantic gesture would have. A woman near the front spoke first, clipboard balanced on her lap. Same format as usual, share if you want, listen if you can't. I stayed pressed against the wall just outside their line of sight. Part of me knew I crossed a boundary, the other part did not care. The first two people who talked blurred together for me. Snippets about hospital stays and long nights floated up the hallway. I caught phrases like family had no idea and could not see a future. Each sentence made my stomach roll because of what I was hiding from. Then the row. Went quiet, that heavy pause before someone important speaks. I did not see the motion, but I heard her name. Jess, the woman at the front, called. You mentioned he might want to share. My entire body went tense as I guessed who he was. Jess touched his elbow and I watched him straighten slowly. His knee bounced once hard, then stilled. I can try, he answered, voice rougher than I had ever heard. I gripped the doorframe so tight my fingers hurt. I almost jumped off a bridge last year, he started. No preamble, just that sentence, clean and brutal. My phone went to Jess because I did not want my family to watch me fall. The word family landed like a slap because I knew exactly who he meant. He paused and let out a breath that sounded like it scratched his chest. I had everything planned, timing, spot, what I would leave behind. I even drafted messages, one for her, one for everyone else. I knew which her was which and my vision blurred. Jess called me nonstop until I picked up, he went on. She figured out where I was from the background noise. She drove out and stood there while I cried on the railing. Listening to that, I felt both furious and grateful in the same pulse. Someone near him asked a short question about the railing. I was already over it, just holding on with my hands, he replied. I was not thinking about impact, just about quiet. That word quiet hit me harder than any mention of death. Another voice, deeper, asked if anyone else knew about that night. He shook his head once, jaw clenched, eyes on the floor. They think I went through a rough patch, that is it. I never told my wife, I could not stand the thought of her picturing it. My knees almost buckled at that last part. He chose my imagination as the thing he had to protect. He also chose to share the truth with everyone in that room, including the woman sitting next to him, steady as a guardrail. The leader asked what stopped him from going back to that bridge. He glanced sideways at Jess before he answered. Having this place, he said, scanning the circle and having her on speed dial. I pressed my lips together to keep from making any sound. So that was it, the piece I had been missing. Not just history, not just old feelings, an emergency system. A whole structure where she was plugged into his survival. And I stood outside the door trying not to fall apart. He talked for a few more minutes, bits and pieces. Medication he avoided, nightmares he still had, mornings where he could not move. He kept repeating one thing, that he did not want to be a burden. I could not stop thinking how he had already decided I could not carry him. When the group shifted to others again, I backed away quietly. I climbed halfway up the stairs and sat on the middle step. The concrete felt cold through my clothes, but it grounded me. I stared at my hands, surprised at how steady they looked. Inside my head it was anything but steady. I knew he was hurting, I knew mental health is messy. I also knew he trusted someone else with his darkest version. You can hold compassion and resentment in the same breath, it burns. Part of me wanted to march in and drag him out. To shout that I deserved to hear this straight from him. Another part recognized he actually needed that circle more than a confrontation. That second part annoyed me because it kept me from the dramatic option. I waited until I heard chairs scraping and softer voices. The meeting was wrapping up, the hour must have passed. I headed up the last steps and slipped out to the parking area. I sat in my car again, engine off, watching the door like a lookout. They emerged together a few minutes later, slower than they went in. He looked lighter and wrecked at the same time. Jess walked close but did not touch him right away. He stopped near their cars and rubbed his face with both hands. She finally reached out and squeezed his shoulder once. "You did good," I heard, carried by the quiet outside. He nodded and pulled her into a brief hug. It was not romantic, it was worse, it was automatic. I ducked down even though I knew they could not see me. Seeing that embrace made the whole situation feel more lopsided. They shared the nightmare and the relief. I got the edited recap. Except I did not even have the recap yet, just stolen pieces. They parted and went to their separate vehicles. I watched his brake lights flare, then fade as he pulled away. I stayed parked until his tail lights disappeared from the street. My hands finally started shaking once I knew he was gone. On the drive home, I replayed his sentence about not telling me. He thought he was shielding me from something unbearable. Meanwhile, I had already heard it through a door and a friend. Protecting me had turned into keeping me out of the room completely. By the time I reached our place, a plan had formed. Not polished, not smart, just inevitable. I could. LD not unknow what I heard, and I was done playing the clueless wife. The only question left was how hard I would hit when I brought that night into our kitchen. I dropped my bag on the chair and went straight to the kitchen table. No TV, no shoes off, no easing in. "Sit down," I said, hands flat on the wood. My voice came out steadier than I felt, which scared me more. He froze halfway to the fridge, keys in his fist. "Everything okay?" He studied my face like it might give him a script. "Not really," I answered, and the air between us tightened. He set the keys down slowly and pulled out the chair across from me. "What is going on?" His legs started bouncing under the table, that old nervous tell. I almost softened, then remembered the church basement and forced myself still. "I know where you were tonight," I started. His jaw clenched and then relaxed, like he tried to reset it. "I followed you," I added before I could talk myself down. "If you lie right now, I will know." A muscle ticked in his cheek once. "Followed me," he repeated, fingers curling around the edge of his chair. "From home," I said, nodding, "to that building on the corner downstairs with the chairs in a circle." His eyes shut for a second like he had been punched. "You listened." His voice dropped rough, almost quiet. I bit the inside of my cheek and nodded again. "I heard enough," I said, because that part was true, not everything but enough to realize how much you have hidden. He pushed his chair back a few inches, like he needed space. "You had no right to be there." His hand cut through the air between us, sharp. "That room is the only place I do not have to perform." "Great," I snapped, "so you can be honest with strangers but not with your wife." The word landed hard even in my own ears. He flinched, which gave me a tiny, ugly flicker of satisfaction. "Do you hear how messed up that sounds from here?" I asked. He dragged his hands over his face and let them drop. "I was protecting you." He looked exhausted, shoulders sagging, eyes ringed with something deeper than tired. "From what?" I asked. "From knowing you almost died without me even getting a warning." Silence sat between us for a beat too long. He avoided my eyes and stared at a spot on the table. "When I went up there, I was not thinking about you," he finally answered. "I was thinking about stopping everything, that is it." There it was, said directly in our kitchen, not whispered through a doorway. It hit different hearing it aimed at me. He swallowed hard and kept going like he did not trust himself to pause. "I called Jess because she already knew that side of me, she had seen it all go downhill before. So she gets the suicidal version and I get what?" I asked, "the roommate who handles groceries and holiday cards." I knew I sounded harsh, I said it anyway. His eyes flashed for a second then dulled. "You get the part of me that still wants a life," he answered. "That sounds noble in your head," I shot back. "Out loud it sounds like you decided which pieces I could handle." I felt my throat tighten but I forced the words out. "You did not even give me the chance to say if I wanted all of you." He exhaled long like he was trying to bleed stress out through his lungs. "If I told you everything back then, you would have looked at me differently." He tapped his chest with 2 fingers. "I did not want to see that look on your face." "You mean the one I am making right now?" I asked. Because I knew my expression was not pretty. It probably matched the inside, hurt and furious in equal parts. He looked at me then and winced like I had proved his point. "I could not stand imagining you picturing me on that ledge every time I was late," he said. "I did not want to put that image in your head." His voice shook on the last word and he looked away. You already check your phone when I do not answer fast enough. And you thought keeping me in the dark would fix that? I asked. I could feel my nails biting into my palms under the table. News flash, I added, knowing nothing did not stop my brain from inventing the worst. I thought about the texts, the cropped photos, the secret meetings, and my stomach turned. He saw something shift in my face because his brows drew together. What else did you do? He asked, watching me closely. I hesitated, which gave him his answer. You talked to her, he guessed, voice suddenly flat. I stared at him and did not bother pretending. I met her, I said, at that cafe by your office. His chair scraped back loud, almost toppling. You what? He asked, hands braced on the table like he needed support. She answered when I messaged, I said, pulse thudding in my ears. I needed to know if I was imagining things, if you two were still crossing lines. His face went through about 3 emotions in 5 seconds. Shock, anger, something that looked a lot like fear. What did she tell you? He asked, shoulders tight. She told me you almost did not make it home that night, I replied. That she was there when you chose not to jump. His eyes closed again, longer this time, and his throat worked. She had no right, he muttered, fingers curling into fists. That was not her story to share. The wrongness of that nearly knocked me sideways. My life is in that story too, I snapped, leaning forward. You just forgot to include me. He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. I wanted one part of my mess that did not touch you, he said. One space where I could talk without worrying I was hurting you more. He sounded almost desperate, like this logic still made sense to him. It hurts more knowing there is a secret version of you that everyone but me gets to see, I answered. I am not saying you owe me every thought that crosses your mind. But planning your own death and assigning her as your emergency contact while I pick out dinner, that is not a small omission. My voice cracked halfway through, and I hated that it gave him leverage. His expression softened for a second, and then hardened again. You make it sound like I was calmly planning vacations, he snapped. I was not rational, I was hanging on by my fingernails. He thumped his chest again, frustrated at his own words. I get that you were not thinking straight, I said, quieter. I am not blaming you for being sick. I swallowed and met his eyes. I am blaming you for staying sick in a way that cut me out and tied you tighter to her. That landed. He dropped back into his seat and stared at a spot on the far wall. I did not tie myself to her, he murmured. She already knew everything by then. She knew who to call, what to say, when to drag me to those meetings. And you never thought maybe I could learn those things too, I asked. I was not even trying to hide the bitterness anymore. I could have sat in that circle next to you. I could have been the one you leaned on instead of the person you edited around. He looked at me then, really looked. She has watched me fall apart before, he said, words slow, careful. She saw the ugliest stuff, the shouting, the shutting down, the days I did not shower or eat, the whole crash. You met me after I had climbed halfway out of the hole. So you decided to keep me at the top of the ladder, I said. Smile for the holidays, keep the house running, never see the bottom. I laughed once short without any humor. Meanwhile, she gets the emergency access pass to your brain. He raked a hand through his hair, aggravated. It is not a competition, he said, almost pleading. You are not on the same level, you matter in completely different ways. Comparing what you mean to me does not even make sense. That line sounds nice, I answered, but here is what it feels like. If you were standing on another overpass tomorrow and could only call one person, it would not be me. I watched that hit him square in the chest. He opened his mouth, closed it, then dropped his gaze. That is not fair, he whispered. It might be true, I replied, and that is the problem. We sat there in that awful pause, both of us breathing hard. I could hear the refrigerator click on in the background, stupid and normal. He finally spoke again, voice rough. I do not call you in those moments because I am ashamed. I do not want you to hear me like that, rambling, crying, talking about disappearing. I want to be the guy you married, not the mess on the railing. I never asked you to be a poster version of yourself, I answered. I would rather know you are struggling than get the polished highlight reel. I felt tears hit my hand and wiped them away, annoyed. I thought we were building a life, not running two different shows. He stared at me, eyes glassy. You think this is easy on me? He asked. I wake up every day hoping my brain will behave, and then I spend the rest of the day hiding when it does not. He let out a breath that sounded more like a choke. For what it is worth, I am grateful she was there, I said. The words tasted strange, but they were true. I am glad you did not go through with it. But I am also angry that the most important moment of your life happened in a world where I did not even exist yet. That is not something I can fix, he answered, shaking his head. No, but you can control what happens now, I replied. You can decide if I stay outside that door or if I get to walk in with you. My heart hammered while I waited for his answer. He wiped his face with both hands and sat up straighter. What does walking in look like for you? He asked. Spelling it out might help because my judgment clearly sucks. That tiny bit of self-awareness almost made me laugh again. It means no more secret meetings with her, I said. If you go to that group, I know about it. If you text her, you do not scrub the tea. Read like a teenager. And eventually, when you are not hanging by a thread, we bring a professional into this together. A therapist, he said, brows pulling together. Yeah, I answered, someone whose literal job is to handle what you are terrified of letting me see. I took a breath and forced myself to add the next part. And I get my own counselor because this triangle has done a number on me too. He sat with that for a minute, eyes on his hands. I can do the therapist piece, he said slowly. I can tell you when I go to the meetings. The part with Jess is harder. Of course it was. My chest tightened before he even explained. She knows the warning signs, he continued, thumb rubbing his palm. If I cut her off completely overnight, I am not sure what that does to my safety net. I hated how reasonable that sounded. I also hated that we were discussing my husband's safety net like it was some shared project. I am not asking you to ghost her tomorrow, I said. I am asking you to stop letting her be your first call for everything while I stay in the dark. That was not my intention, he protested. Intent does not change the fact that is how it feels, I answered. I am tired of coming second to someone who already had her time with you. I heard my own voice shake on that last part and let it. He leaned back and stared at the ceiling for a long moment. I can talk to her, he said finally. Tell her I need to pull back and bring you into more of this. She will understand. She cares about me getting better, not keeping me. You are sure about that? I asked. Because part of me did not fully believe it. Yes, he answered, meeting my eyes, she has been pushing me to tell you for months. That does not make this hurt less, but it is the truth. We sat there drained, words used up for the moment. Nothing felt solved, but something had shifted. The secret shape of his life was in the room now, not locked in his phone or that basement. I could feel the weight of it pressing on both of us. I do not know if I can do this long term, I admitted. The confession surprised even me as it left my mouth. I want to, but I do not want to spend the rest of my life wondering who you called first whenever you are not okay. His face tightened like the floor had tilted under him. I will earn that back, he said quietly. You should have never had to hear about that night from anyone but me. He pushed his chair back and stood unsteady. I cannot change how it started, but I can change what happens from here. He reached for my hand across the table and stopped halfway. I looked at his fingers hanging there, not quite touching. For a second I almost grabbed them. Instead I folded my arms around myself and stayed put. Start by making the call to that therapist tomorrow, I said. And by telling Jess you cannot keep me out anymore. His hand dropped slow, like he expected that answer. Okay, he murmured, nodding once, I can do that much. That night we lay in the same bed with too much space between us. His breathing evened out eventually, or at least he pretended to sleep. I stared at the ceiling and listened for any change in his rhythm. Every tiny shift made me wonder if I was hearing the man who shared his nightmares with someone else, or the one trying to figure out how to let me in without breaking everything. His phone rattled on the counter, and both of us looked up. He was pouring coffee, I was pretending to read an email. The screen lit, and I saw the preview flash for half a second. Jay. He caught my glance and did not flip it face on this time. He picked it up and turned the screen toward me. It is her, he said, thumb hovering. Want to read it together? My throat tightened because that small offer felt bigger than the words. I nodded and he opened the message with a slow tap. Hey, checking in, how are things? Also, I am around if you need anything. No heart, no inside joke, just that one line sitting there. My stomach still clenched anyway. What do you want to do with that? I asked. He rubbed his brow, eyes on the text, jaw working. I need to answer, he said, but not like before. He placed the phone between us, as if it belonged to both. Type it where I can see, I said, arms folded. He gave a short nod and started. Thanks for reaching out. I am getting help with Kate now. I will only contact you if I am in serious trouble and she knows that. He stopped and looked at me like he waited for a verdict. Every part of me wanted to delete the last part. The part where she still existed as emergency backup in his pocket. At the same time, I knew ripping her out overnight was a fantasy. Add that you will not hide messages from me, I said. He swallowed and typed again, slower. No more secret texts. If I talk to you, my wife is aware. He exhaled once long, like that line cost him something. Good enough, I said, even though nothing about this felt good. He hit send and set the phone down between us again. We waited like idiots for 3 blinking dots to show up. They appeared, vanished, reappeared, stretched on forever. Finally her response popped in. Proud of you, she deserves to know. Let me know how I can support both of you without getting in the way. I hated that I could not hate that message. It was clean, grown up, almost annoyingly reasonable. Okay, I said, now we see if your actions match your texts. 2 days later we sat on a small couch in a quiet office. He fidgeted with his sleeve, I twisted the strap of my bag. A woman across from us glanced at some notes and then at our faces. So, she said, what brings you both here together? I waited to see if he would stall or spin. He surprised me and went straight in. I tried to end my life last year, he said, hands clenched. My friend pulled me back. My wife found out from everyone but me. He stared at the floor after that, ears bright red. That blunt confession knocked the air out of me for a second. I had expected softer wording, maybe vague phrases. Hearing him say it in one clean shot in front of a stranger hit hard. I also weirdly respected him for not dressing it up. The therapist turned to me with calm eyes. How does it feel hearing him say that out loud now? Like I am late to my own marriage, I answered. Everyone else got the real story first, I got the polished trailer. He flinched and looked at me, then at her. That is not what I meant to do, he said. I thought I was shielding her from the worst parts. It turns out keeping secrets made everything worse. So right now, she asked, what hurts you most? I took a breath and forced myself not to sugarcoat anything. I feel like a supporting character in my own partnership, I said. I want to be the person he turns to when his brain circles that night, not the one who finds out a year later. Her gaze shifted between us as she listened. Then she nodded like she had heard this pattern 1,000 times. We can work on 2 tracks, she said. Safety for him, clarity and trust for you. She had him map out what he does when his thoughts slide sideways. Call support group contact, text Jess, sit in his car. She drew a rough ladder of steps while he talked. It was surreal watching his inner routines appear on paper. Where does your wife fit on this ladder? She asked finally. He stared at that paper like it was a test he had not studied for. I want her near the top, he said slowly. I also panic that if she hears me at my worst, she will look at me like a stranger. Let her answer that, the therapist said, leaning back. She looked at me, not him. Where do you want to be, realistically, with what you know now? My hands were damp and I wiped them on my jeans. I do not need to be the only person in his life, I said. I am not asking you to erase Jess like she never existed. He tensed slightly at her name but stayed quiet. I am asking to be first in line when things get dangerous. He exhaled through his nose, eyes closing for a second. That sounds fair, he said quietly. It also scares me. His fingers tapped his knee in a quick, uneven rhythm. The therapist nodded like fear was expected. Let us build a crisis plan, she said. Step 1, if things get dark, what is the very first action? She waited, pen ready, while we both sat there. He looked at me, not at the floor this time. I call you, he said, voice rough. Not text, not email, call. Something in my chest loosened and tightened in the same moment. Step 2, she asked, scribbling that down. If for some reason she cannot pick up, what then? Then I call Jess, he answered, no hesitation now. But I tell Kate afterwards, no more secret cleanups. I was not thrilled to hear that second step. At the same time, I would rather know the true order. A hard truth beats a pretty lie most days. I nodded barely enough for both of us to see. By the end of the session, we had a rough structure. Regular appointments for him alone, sessions together every few weeks. A list of warning signs he promised to tell me about. A number for a hotline on a sticky note in my wallet. Walking back to the car, we did not talk for a while. He unlocked the doors and rested his forehead on the roof. That was a lot, he muttered. Yeah, I answered, but at least it was honest. Weeks blurred into a new kind of routine after that. He went to individual sessions, sometimes the group. He told me when he was going, which sounded small but mattered. I watch patterns instead of shadows. One night I woke to the sound of him in the bathroom. Not brushing his teeth, not showering, just breathing too fast. I lay there and counted a few beats, then got up. He stood by the sink, gripping the edge like it might slide away. His reflection met my eyes in the mirror, and he froze. This is one of those nights, he said, voice shaky. How bad? I asked, crossing my arms to keep them from shaking too. He swallowed, Adam's apple jumping. I am thinking about shutting everything off, he admitted. Not a plan yet, just pictures. He pressed his palms against his temples like he could squeeze the thoughts out. I started to grab my phone for her. That admission stung, I will not lie. At least he did not hide it this time. Who are you supposed to call first? I asked. He looked at me like I was the answer to a question, not an obstacle. You, he said, almost whispering. He picked up his phone and held it out. Stay with me while I delete that reflex. His thumb hovered near Jess's thread before he locked the screen instead. We sat on the bathroom floor, backs against the cabinet. He talked in halting pieces about images that would not leave. I listened, counted his breaths with mine, reminded him of his plan. It was not pretty or romantic, it was raw and sweaty and real. At one point my mind drifted to Jess, wherever she was. Part of me wondered if her phone sat on a nightstand, screen dark. If some part of her felt the silence where his messages used to be. I hated that I cared about how she fit into this too. He texted her the next day while I watched. Hey, working on bringing Kate into my bad nights, I might reach out less, please do not take it as distance, just trying to change patterns. She wrote back quickly. Proud of you again, tell her I am rooting for both of you. He showed me the screen without me asking. Is that okay? He asked, thumb resting near delete. It is your recovery, I said, but I need this level of transparency if I am staying. The word staying pulled both our attention like a magnet. Are you? He asked softly. It was the question hanging under everything we did. I looked at his phone, at his face, at my own hands. I am here today, I answered. I am not promising 5 years from now. Couple sessions slowly shifted from panic control to bigger questions. Could I trust him again? Could he accept that I was not unbreakable? We fought in that room with someone watching, which weirdly helped. You argue differently when a neutral person can call you out. During one appointment, the therapist asked me point blank, what would make you decide to walk away? My chest clenched and I stared at my knuckles. If he ever moves me back to the edited version, I said. And what would make you lean in? She asked him. He thought for a long moment and then spoke. If she believes me when I say I am trying, he answered. Not succeeding every day, just trying in the open. I did not give him an answer right then. Trust is not a switch you flip because someone wants it. It grows back like skin after a bad scrape. Slow, ugly, and you always feel the scar when you move. The last big shift came a few months later on a Thursday. He stood in the hallway holding his jacket and his keys. Group meets tonight, he said. Do you want to come or should I go alone? He left the choice in my hands instead of sneaking out. I thought about the stairwell and the doorway where I once hid. About listening to his voice crack from the other side of the wall. My chest tightened and loosened in the same breath. Yeah, I said, I want to sit in the room this time. We sat in the circle, 2 chairs side by side. He shared again, shorter this time, but he glanced at me while he talked. This is the first time she is here, he told them, voice steady. I used to keep this part away from her, now I am trying to let her see all of it. The leader welcomed me, the others nodded, then the focus moved on. No one clapped, no one made it a big show. It was just another story in a room full of heavy stories. I held my own hands to keep from shaking. On the drive home, he kept glancing over like he waited for me to bolt. How was that for you? He asked at a red light. Awful, I admitted, and strangely less awful than imagining it from the parking lot. He laughed once, short and tired and weirdly hopeful. Which brings me to right now. He is in the living room with his laptop, half watching something. My phone is on the table next to me with this post open. I keep pausing to listen whenever his device buzzes. Tonight, every time it vibrates, he gets up and walks over. He turns the screen toward me before he even unlocks it. Work spam, his sister, nothing from Jess so far. The silence from that thread is its own kind of noise. I know he cares about me, I know I matter in ways. I also know there is a version of him that only she has ever witnessed. The person gripping metal in the dark, sobbing, ready to step off the edge of everything. I am not sure I will ever fully feel like enough next to the woman who pulled him back from that moment. So I am here asking strangers what to do with that. Do you stay when love is real but history is lopsided? Do you keep building something with a man whose survival is tied to another woman's name in his phone? Or do you walk away before the next crisis proves you were never the first call?